Research shows there are almost 200 truck-related fires each year. The fact is, almost 1 in 10 of all truck losses are caused by fire. It is likely that on average, there is at least 1 truck fire every day of the year. The long-term effect of a fire to your truck could mean the end of your business, or at least a crippling disruption to your financial livelihood. Three elements are needed to start a fire: oxygen, a fuel source, and heat. Remove any one of these elements and the fire will not start. The fuel source in your truck could be any combustible material that ignites at higher than normal operating temperatures, or a flammable material that ignites at normal operating temperatures. But heat is a primary culprit. Without the generation of heat, the fire triangle is incomplete and a fire cannot occur. Whilst oxygen and fuel sources will always be present, the variable that causes fire is heat in all its different forms.
The main sources of heat on a truck are the exhaust pipe. Abnormal sources of heat can occur at the hubs. If you can't put your hand on the hub, there's a problem. Similarly, if you can't put your hand on the tyres, there's a problem. Many plastics on a truck burn freely. For example, the electrical conduit will burn freely, whereas the cable insulation usually has some retardation. Noise shields will burn freely. Foam on the front of the firewall will burn freely. Fiberglass is commonly used for cabin panels and for the engine bonnet. In a fire, it will burn. Fuel leaks that result in a mist of fuel that reaches the turbocharger will produce an explosion in air in the engine compartment. Rubber has no fire retardant properties. Tyres in particular will burn freely.
A fire can start at several vulnerable locations in your truck. There are 5 main areas that are typically vulnerable to causing or catching on fire. These include the electrical systems, engine compartments, wheel ends, truck cabins, and load spaces.
Electrical faults cause about 50% of fires on trucks. Electrical fires are usually caused by rubs on main cables that run between the battery, starter motor, and the alternator. Main cables from the batteries do not have circuit breaker protection. In the engine compartment, the exhaust system is always on the other side to the fuel system. A leak in the high pressure part of the fuel system will create an aerosol, and that fuel aerosol will reach the exhaust pipe. Be careful in the engine compartment. The alternator cable probably has no circuit breaker protection and it's taken on a route that might make it vulnerable to rubbing. Dragging brakes cause the brake drum to get very hot. The heat of that drum may cause the rim of the tyre to catch fire. Dragging brakes come from brake system failures. The air system that holds the spring brakes off might be leaking. The valve might be stuck. Wheel bearing failures can also result in the brake drum not running centrally, so the brakes drag, and the heat of that will get to the tyre. Disc brakes that drag are more likely to cause the inner wheel seals on the hub to fail and the oil or grease to come out and get onto the disc. Cabin fires, when they occur, are usually electrical, and they are often because of modifications to the electrical system. Excessive currents can be drawn. Sometimes the fuses are excessive for the size of the wire. Sometimes the connection points are inappropriate because the main cables are not electrically protected with a circuit breaker. Trailer fires, when they occur, usually occur at the wheel ends. They are usually due to bearing failures, and it's usually the outer bearing that fails. When a fire occurs, it's really important that the cause is determined, because then the risk can be reduced in other situations. Insurance companies want to know what caused the fire. They want to know whether it was reasonably foreseeable and whether the insurance policy covers it. And the driver will also want to know what caused it. There's a human toll to a fire, and the driver will go through the events in his or her mind and will want to know that they did the right thing at the right time. The fire investigator will want to know the history of the vehicle, and the workshop manager is well placed to describe that. The workshop practices should be documented and the service history of the vehicle will be available. Sometimes this is very important in determining developing faults along the way that subsequently lead to failure. The learnings from that fire need to be used to reduce risk in other situations. Quite often the vehicle needs to be moved, but at least thorough photographing of the scene will allow the examiner to see what was where when the incident occurred. Drivers should always report changes in performance, or at least discuss it with the workshop manager. Drivers should never ignore telltale signs of developing faults or fire. Smoke in the cabin is a telltale sign of an electrical problem. Smoke coming from wheel ends, even at the start, wispy smoke, should never be ignored. There is an opportunity to prevent the flames occurring if it's stopped quickly enough. When it becomes obvious to a driver there is a serious fire problem, quick decisions are needed. Firstly, the truck needs to be stopped in a safe place. If appropriate, the trailer might be disconnected, but this may not be possible if the truck cannot be driven forward. The driver should use a fire extinguisher if it's safe to do so. If the problem is at a wheel end, a water extinguisher may well extinguish the fire, but beware that there is a risk that the tyre might explode, so the driver should never be directly in front of a tyre that is on fire or could catch fire. For every fire there should be a forensic examination. There's a risk to drivers at a fire scene. The driver is vulnerable near to the wheel ends. The tyres might explode. The fire might develop very quickly. The driver will probably try to move the truck. If it's a trailer fire, the trailer will be wound down and the truck will be driven away. This is a risky business in the middle of a fire. Other vehicles will be distracted by the fire and may drive into the vehicle, may hit the driver on the side of the road.
8 years is the average age of a heavy vehicle involved in a fire. Regular servicing and maintenance, along with detailed inspections before you leave and at the midpoint of your trip, could save your business by avoiding a fire starting in your truck. The PreTrip Checklist helps you identify the condition of your truck's tires and wheel bearings, electrical wiring and components, water, oil, and fuel lines, debris buildup, and suspension height. The midpoint checklist helps you look for fuel or oil spills under the truck, air leaks inside the cabin, and reminds you to remove any buildup of debris that you can find. For more information on the causes of fires to your truck, go to the ARTSA Institute website and download the Fire Prevention Guide.